Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, welcome everyone to the Chasing Giants podcast, episode 214 with Don Higgins. I'm Terry Peer. It is Resurrection Sunday, Don. This episode is going to air on Easter Sunday.
Yeah, happy Easter, everyone. Hope everyone remembers what we're celebrating. It's not bunnies and Easter eggs.
It's, we look at, in deer hunting or in deer habitat, we talk about how the summer solstice starts the entire year and how the testosterone level will change based on the daylight getting shorter every day or soybeans drying down. You know, there's pivotal days throughout the year that set the tone for deer hunting, but us as Christians, tomorrow is celebrating that one day that our whole premise of salvation centered around, and probably the most important day to even remember. I mean, obviously Christmas is a big deal when Jesus was born, but if it wasn't for him rising from the dead, none of the other stuff would have mattered.
Amen. We think about Good Friday and the fact that he was laid in the grave, but on Sunday, here he comes. He's alive.
That's right. So we hope everyone remembers what the day's about. We have a interesting set of questions tonight, and we're going to spend some time talking about those. I think you picked out 6 questions that I want to leave time for, but I'm really intrigued to listen to how your week went with your grandsons, and if you can, give an update about Andrea, and then talk a little bit about what you got into with those 2 boys. A lot of work got done according to your social media posts.
Yeah, so Andrea had surgery on Tuesday, but we picked the boys up last Sunday. After church, we picked them up and brought them home for the week, and she had appointments on Monday and then had the surgery on Tuesday. The surgery went well. They removed the tumors, sent them in for biopsy. We don't have the results of that back yet, but they wanted to biopsy them and see if there was any live cancer cells left that they could find. And if there is, it might affect how they move forward. But the doctor, the surgeon, seemed pretty happy with what he found. And I think one way or another, she's going to have radiation here starting in about 6 weeks once she's healed up from this surgery. But still really sore. We're going to keep the boys through Tuesday of this coming week to give her a chance to rest and not have to deal with them. So it's been a joy having them here. I'll tell you what, I put them to work. We planted a bunch of trees, just did all kinds of different projects around here, and they got a work ethic in them that I was a little bit surprised. I mean, I knew they would do whatever I asked of them, but they got right with the program, and once they seen what was going on with some of these different projects, they jumped in, and I didn't have to tell them what the next step was. Once they seen the whole process, away they went with shovels or whatever, and pretty proud of them.
Well, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, and both their mom and their dad, but especially their dad, is one of the hardest workers I've ever seen. So it doesn't surprise me one bit that they know how to jump in. I've seen videos of your youngest grandson driving excavators and all kinds of stuff. So he's all about it.
Well, they've drove the side by side for miles. Today we was on 3 different properties working. We was on the home farm, and we went up to the farm north of town where we do the master class, the second property. We planted some persimmon trees up there this afternoon, and then we went from there down to the new 98-acre farm and planted some persimmon trees there. So they made the rounds and even found a shed antler today as we was planting those trees on the new 98.
Good deal. Now, did you say you took him on the consulting trail with you?
Well, they ended up not going. They were going to go, but Wyatt was sick the first part of the week, and so I didn't want to, take them and have them get the client sick or anything. And then today I went on another consulting job this morning, and Walker wasn't feeling good. I got him out of bed to go this morning, and Walker wasn't feeling so well, so they both decided to stay home. But then I got home right after lunch, and we went and they were feeling up to planting trees, so we went and done that.
Gotcha. Is this the longest stint that you've had the boys by themselves, or?
No, I mean, by the time I take them back, it probably will be. But I mean, we've had them for a week or so at a time before.
Yeah, special times. I remember going and being able to spend a couple weeks or parts of the summer with my grandfather, and I always remember how special that was and look back on it and really cherish those memories. So I know not only for you but for them, pretty special.
Yeah, I really wanted them here for those tree plantings because I know those trees are going to outlive me. And I told them that one day they'll be hunting deer under those trees with their grandkids, whether it's grandsons or granddaughters. But I think we planted 75 persimmon trees this week on 3 different properties. So, yeah.
A lot of work. Well, let's take a quick break and listen to the folks from ASIA, and then we'll come back and I want to dive into these questions and see where this conversation goes. You might be the one that will go on a rant this week, but we'll see. Stay tuned.
ASIA Gear has perfected one of the most innovative camo patterns on the market. The unique camo pattern designed to mimic the feather patterns of one of North America's greatest predators, the great horned owl. Combined with intuitive features, superior comfort, and ultra high quality fabrics give bow hunters the ultimate advantage. ASIO has outfitted over 10,000 bow hunters across the country with over 1,000 5-star reviews. Visit asiogear.com to check it out for yourself. Use code CHASINGGIANTS for 15% off.
All right, welcome back to the show. We're going to jump right into questions this week. And Don, you are going to have to forgive me if we are, I don't know if you can see it, but my wife and kids are out of town and I am here alone with the dogs, and I guess they got a little bored. So one of the dogs ate my mouse. So it's acting a little funky. So if it takes me a minute to get between screens, you'll have to just bear with me for a second.
We'll make it work one way or another. So, the first question comes in from Anonymous. Someone didn't want their name mentioned. It says, Dear Don and Terry, I've been looking for a second hunting property to purchase for quite a while trying to find something with minimal opportunities for neighboring hunting pressure. Nothing's come up that meets that requirement. Have written multiple notes to landowners as well with no success. Would you consider purchasing a tract that doesn't quite meet your standards to be in the game with another hunting property, or would you hold out hoping something comes along that's more ideal? As a side note, this won't be the past piece we buy. I'm guessing that was supposed to be last piece. As a side note, this won't be the last piece we buy. Even if we buy something subpar, we will continue to look for other pieces as well. Well, I'll tell you, what I will guess will happen is you'll settle for something, a property that doesn't meet what you're really looking for. And as soon as you do, the property you really want comes along and you're not in a position to buy it. And you say you can buy other pieces, but you don't know what's going to come along. When you invest in that first property, there's no doubt, no matter who you are, it's going to take some of your buying power away when the next property comes along. Even if you pay cash for it, another one comes along that might be a little bigger, more expensive than what you had originally planned for, and you've already tied your money up in the other property. I'm not sure that, it would have to just be a bargain property for me to lower my standards very much at all. But, you got to do what you got to do. I'm not sure how big of properties you're talking about or the price ranges or anything like that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of variables here we don't know about finances, and the amount of money that they have to invest, how they're going to pay for it. Interest rates are always going to be floating, but I can tell you land's never going to get cheaper. So, for the most part. But yeah, it's a tough question because, I think that a lot of people jump in. It's like hunting with discipline. There's not a lot of patience. Wes Delks was a perfect example of that. He kept waiting and waiting and researching and sending letters, and then he found the right piece. And I think a lot of patience also has to be included in that.
Yeah, I mean, I've just seen more than one person buy a property that didn't meet their expectations, and then they are stuck with it. But who knows?
All right. Well, that was an easy question to answer. We'll move on to question number 2.
So this one comes from Grant Watson from Iowa Falls, Iowa. Says, Dear Don and Terry, do you think there is any correlation with deer antler size and hog manure? Illinois used to have many hog farmers throughout the state producing a lot of manure that is loaded with rich nutrients that gets applied into the soil, which the plants absorb and deer consume. Iowa, on the other hand, has hog production everywhere and is producing some of the largest deer. Just thinking outside the box, would like your thoughts. Well, Grant, I like how you think outside the box, but I really don't think there's a correlation between the two. If you think about it, that hog manure gets put on a small minority of the landscape. And the plants absorb those nutrients and take them up, which the deer consume. But no matter what ag field you're talking about, the farmers are applying some form of fertilizer. So when they apply that hog manure, that's saving them on their nitrogen cost. So they don't have to put as much nitrogen, maybe in some cases none at all, but I think most of the time they're still putting some nitrogen on. A farmer who, on the other hand, who has no hogs and thus hog manure to utilize on his fields, he's still putting nitrogen down. He's just putting more than the field that has the hog manure on it. So when it gets down to it, these farmers are balancing the fertilizer with the soil tests that they take. So, their soil test may say they need X number of units of nitrogen, and they put on hog manure, and maybe the hog manure allows for 75% of that. The other 25% is going to come in another form, whether it be, liquid nitrogen, anhydrous ammonia, or the liquid 28 or 32% that they use, pretty common today, or even urea. There's different ways to apply that nitrogen, but in the end, that farmer is going to do everything he can to maximize his yield. And if hog manure is part of the equation, well, that's great. It saves him some money on fertilizer, but in the end, that field is going to be fertilized with everything that crop needs to grow. So I just don't see the correlation that you've laid out here making a whole lot of sense.
I'm going to oversimplify it. I think it's age structure.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we could go down that rabbit hole, but everybody wants to, in some cases, I think, overcomplicate things. But the Iowa's where it is because of not hog manure, but because they don't let out of state residents come in there and shoot $2. So
yeah,
me included.
The number of residents in Iowa is way less than it is in Illinois. So, the interesting thing is if you look at an atlas, the square miles in Iowa versus the square miles in Illinois, those two states are almost exactly the same size. But Illinois has got like 4 times more people. So, if the population in each state, the same percentage of the population was deer hunters, and I'm going to guess in Iowa it's a higher percentage, but, there's just a whole lot more resident deer hunters in
Right.
Illinois. And then you throw the non-residents on top of it, and you throw a DNR that doesn't care about age structure on top of it. You're absolutely right, Terry. It all comes down to age. And in Iowa, there's a whole lot more older bucks than there is in Illinois.
All right. We might get through
this one here.
We might get through this show pretty quick tonight.
Well, I'm going to go on a little rant here before I even read this one. So if you're looking at this, on YouTube, and you can see the video version, you can see there's not a person's name here. There's a note that I made that says free t-shirt rules. And folks, I want to just go over something before I read this question. You guys submit questions via my website, and there's a form that you fill out, and on that form you list your name, you list your mailing address, and your city and state, your zip code, your email address, and your t-shirt size. Well, you would be absolutely shocked at how many of these forms come in, and it's just all screwed up. Like in the name, it'll have the state or something crazy like that, and in the address, it'll have the email address. Well, folks, if I use your submission on this podcast, you will get a free t-shirt, provided that you fill out the form correctly. I just don't have the time to go back and be, going through old your podcast outlines to find your question, and going through old email submissions where you submitted these questions to find your question. And it seems like we're getting more and more of these. And then I'll get emails saying, you used my question back 6 months ago and I never did get a t-shirt. Guys, I don't have time to go back and look through that stuff. If you submit a question and your form is filled out correctly, you will get a t-shirt mailed to you. If you don't see a t-shirt, it's probably it is absolutely one of two reasons. Either number one, you didn't fill out the form correctly, or number two, I sent it and it got lost in the mail. And in either case, I'm not sending you another one. I hate to be that way, but I'm just telling you, I don't have the time for it. These are free t-shirts that we're giving out free. If you can't fill out the form, I'm sorry. And if people getting too much of an uproar, we'll just quit using questions where it's not filled out correctly, and then nobody can be mad. But anyway, I don't look at
people
that.
People got to understand that these podcasts cost us about $100 in t-shirts, basically.
Yeah, every week.
When we use this many questions, we got to buy these every week for people,
and it's
fun.
over $100. By the time we pay shipping to ship these t-shirts to mail them, we spend over $100 a podcast. But the big thing for me is time. One person doesn't fill out this thing correctly, and a month, 2 months, 6 months later, he contacts me. I got to go back through all kinds of crap to find his question and all that. So just be glad you got your question answered. And if you didn't get a t-shirt, you know what? Send another question in, and maybe we'll pick your question again, but I don't have time for it. That's mini rant number one for this podcast, Terry.
Right.
Maybe another one later. But so anyway, this question comes from Brookville, Indiana. And I apologize if I offended you, whoever sent this in, but you're not getting a t-shirt because you didn't fill things out like you should have. So he says, Don and Terry, first of all, thanks for all the information you provide using your own personal time on these podcasts. I hope to have one of you to my place someday. My question pertains to one of the properties I hunt in Indiana. I do not own it, but have a great relationship with the landowner. He lets me make habitat changes I want. On 75 acres I hunt, I have a mostly wooded flat hilltop, 20 acres, which contains 2 1-acre pasture fields. Road access is in this side. The property then falls off into one huge hillside. A pretty consistent elevation drops to a creek bed at the property backside border. This hillside is very thick bush honeysuckle throughout, and I know the deer use it heavily. I am having trouble figuring out how to pinpoint mature buck activity and access routes into this area. My only luck has been catching bucks checking scrapes on the borders of this thick area. The deer have an easy time staying away from danger, and there are a good number of mature bucks because of this. The bad part is they're staying away from me as well. Any advice on how to hunt this situation smarter? I have been tempted several times to eliminate the majority of this thick habitat and leave smaller bedding areas, but it's a lot of work and I don't want to intrude that much on an area that I know holds deer. Well, I think the one thing that has really struck me in the past couple of consulting seasons is that most landowners don't understand the advantage that they have when it comes to hunting their property versus, someone just a permission property. And I know this person does not own this property, but they basically said they can do whatever they want. A friend owns it, so they can do whatever they want. Typically a deer hunter on a piece of property, he looks for deer sign, he looks for what the deer are doing, and then he looks for places that he can put a stand to take advantage of that. Now, the more advanced deer hunters, they will take things into consideration like access to those stands, wind direction, and such. But to take things to even a higher level, if you own a property, have full access to property like this person does, is you can put those deer where you want them. And Wes Delks made a great post here in the last day or so about influencing deer movement. You want to use the positives and the negatives. You want to use every positive pull that you possibly can to drag a deer past your website. And then you want to use every negative you can to push the deer from other areas towards your website. And I think in the picture that Wes posted, someone had lined up a bunch of big round bales of hay to push that deer traffic towards an elevated blind. And the big thing that I see with deer hunters is most guys, even that own their own land, don't recognize or don't take advantage of the opportunity that they're given to change the deer movement patterns on their property. If there's a certain movement pattern that you can't effectively hunt, such as was described here, well, do whatever it takes to bring those deer past your stand where you have good access and you can play the wind. So what's that mean here? Well, with this thick bush honeysuckle, one thing that I've done is I've cut paths through it. And we've talked about that on here before. So you go in and you cut a path right past your right past your tree stand, and you get those deer passing by at 20 yards. Well, then let's do something else. Let's hang a rope scrape right there in front on that path, 20 yards in front of your stand. And you just do multiple things to bring those deer, to encourage those deer to travel past your stand. Well, let's say that there's another path 50 yards in the timber that the deer like to use instead of the one you've created 20 yards in front of your stand. So you go in there in the wintertime after season, you take a chainsaw and you cut a tree down so the treetop falls right across that path that they want to use. And you use negatives and positives to influence that deer movement. We talk about fences on here sometimes. You can put up a fence and end that, wherever that fence ends, you're going to funnel them deer around the end of it every time. That's just that's probably one of the most radical examples, but there's all kinds of things that you can do if you own a property to influence deer to go where you want them to go. And a lot of times on my property or a client's property, I'm looking for trees. And it's not just a tree, but I'm thinking of, okay, here's a great spot where I can push deer movement past this area. Is there a good tree? Okay, there's maybe one or two good trees to pick from. So I shift whatever I was going to do. I shift it just a little bit more towards that tree to really influence the deer traffic past that tree. So, I also will refer back to a post I made earlier this winter on a farm in Iowa. And it was a picture of me standing there with a client under this big tree that was out in the middle of a wide open field. It was on a open ridgetop field, and I was there under that tree in the snow. Some of you guys might remember that. And I said in that post, this tree doesn't look like much today, but one day there will be a giant shot from this tree. And the reason for it was that tree was in a perfect location to build around. There was a fence that ran right under that tree, and about 20 yards from that fence was an open gate. And so what we did there was on one side of that fence, or one side of that tree, we was going to plant switchgrass on that ridge top. Well, the other side of the fence, we was going to put the food. Well, that, even though it was just a cattle fence, by opening that gate, that is enough to really direct that traffic right past that fence. But to enhance it even more, we was going to do two more things. We was going to put a rope scrape on one of the branches on that tree, and we was going to plant 2 or 3 pear trees right at that gate opening. So those deer coming out of that switchgrass into that food had multiple reasons to come past that tree. They had an open gate, they had a rope scrape, they had pear trees. All of that in the gap right between the bedding and the food. We created that. Today, if you'd walk by that tree, there's not one deer hunter in 1,000 that would put a stand in that tree today because it's in the wide open. But by influencing that property, that tree, I'm telling you, is going to be the best tree on that farm when it's all said and done. Within 5 years from now, when there's pears have been planted and they're producing fruit, the switchgrass is mature. There's a food plot on the other side of the fence. That rope scrape has been hit for the past 3 or 4 seasons. That tree is going to become the best tree on that whole farm. And that is what most landowners who deer hunt miss. They don't build great stand sites. They just walk in and say, well, there's a deer trail there, I'm going to put a stand next to it. You got such an advantage if you own property. You need to take advantage of it.
I saw Joe Miles post I don't know if it was a reel or just a picture, and he was setting up on a specific stand he had access to, and he hinge cut over and blocked off a second trail, so it pushed everything to the trail that was closest to that tree. And I mean, it's a great example of what you're talking about. Instead of hunting, we've talked about this and we laugh about it. When we go on a consulting visit, people want to show us every scrape and rub on the farm. And quite honestly, I'm probably more patient than Wes is. Wes is go, go, go when he's on these farm visits. But really we're looking for places that we can access. And we can funnel deer in a lot of different ways to get them to manipulate. And what they're doing now on the farm is not as important as what they're going to be doing after we manipulate the habitat to bring them close to where we have access. We've talked about that till we're blue in the face. And everybody's so caught up with either going and hunting the back property line and tromping through their property, or worrying about hunting where the existing buck traffic is. Now, if you're hunting public land, that's a completely different story. I mean, we're not talking about that or permission properties that you can't do anything to. This is if you have control.
Yeah, you're right, Wes. He blasts through properties. A lot of times he'll do 2 in a day, and he does a good job. I mean, I review his plans, and his plans are spot on. But he's getting with the program, and I think you and I are a little bit more patient with our clients. And I've told my wife many times, I've went to more than one property where I only needed to be there an hour. I seen enough the first hour. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I knew what needed to be done. I didn't even need to think about it. It was so, I think it's just from the years of doing it that now I know what I want to do. And it doesn't take that long. I need to see everything, don't get me wrong, but you can be on a side-by-side. You can see a lot in an hour.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times I'll go and I'll spend 5-6 hours on a property, and I could have left the first hour, but, the client paid me to be there, and I want to make sure every question they've got is answered. I want to make sure everything that they want to show me I've seen. And it's more than just me putting a plan together. It's the whole experience for them. And I want to make sure they get their money's worth. But
we're also evaluating how
simple.
Yeah, we're also evaluating how they hunt. As we talk to them and go around, we're picking their brain and seeing how they respond to different questions that we ask, so we can see how they hunt. That also dictates what we write in the plan, because we need to know what their objectives are, how they do it, and how we need to guide them a little bit. It's different at every place we go. That's the funnest part about it. It's listening to what the client wants out of it. Obviously, you and I could go in and with our goals on a property, and it'd be completely different than what a client would be.
there's more than once I've been with a client and I needed to tell them something negative, that they're doing. And I'm feeling this client out because I don't want to offend them. I want to say it in such a way that I make my point without being offensive. And I've just got to know the person for a couple of hours, conversing about other things, just as my mind is sitting there spinning, thinking, I've got a message here. I need to get this point made to this person, but I need to get to know this person so I know how I can, verbalize it without being offensive to them. Me, most of the time I just spit out whatever comes to my mind. And when I'm with a client, I take a little different approach. I try not to be offensive, and I think of the best way to voice what I want to say. And that takes getting to know the person a little bit.
But 9 times out of 10, the people that are bringing us in are saying, just tell us. That's why I've had more than one person say, just spit it out. We're in. They listened to the podcast. They understand that we're going to have a different approach, and that's why we're there to begin with. So we get that a lot. Very few times do we get, a lot of pushback, but.
Well, we also make a lot of friends on these consulting visits. So, it's a whole lot easier to make a friend when you spend 4 or 5 hours with them than if you're there 45 minutes and say, see you. So that's a big part of it too.
Absolutely. All right. We'll move on to the next one here.
This one comes from John Kessinger from Perrysburg, Ohio. It says, hey, Don and Terry, love the podcast and everything you guys are about. Continued prayers for your daughter, Andrea. Don, my question is about hunting giant bucks with friends and family. I have had the privilege to chase 2 giant bucks I believe would score over 200 inches in my life. However, I did not personally harvest either one. A close friend of mine ended up harvesting one of those bucks on a hunt that I invited him on, which was a 211-inch gross, 205 net, non-typical in 2021. I can honestly say that I was thrilled to be a part of the hunt and recovery to experience that with him. We are still close friends to this day and even bought property together. Have you ever had a big buck come between you and a friend or family member? What advice would you give to those listening about claiming a buck they've seen on camera or in person? I know my situation has worked out, but it seems more and more people struggle with this. Thanks and God bless. John, I have never had a big buck I was after that somebody else shot that, there was hard feelings later. I've chased a lot of bucks that I did not get. I think it really comes down to, your reaction to someone else shooting a buck should be the same reaction that you would want them to have if you shot it. And I know that's hard for some people to do, but that's definitely the best approach. Big bucks make people do stupid things. We said that before. That's probably never going to change. I think a lot of it just comes with maturity. The older I get, believe it or not, I like to chase big deer more than I ever have in my life. But the kill means less to me today than it's ever meant in my life. And if someone else, shoots a deer that I'm after, I'll congratulate them. I've given away shed antlers from bucks that other people have shot that I had antlers to. I believe that that's just the right thing to do. I know that there's people in my area that would never give me an antler if I shot a buck they had a shed from. But, that's on them, not me. I just, try to be the sportsman that you want other people to be. That's about the best advice I could give. But to answer your question, no, I've never had a big buck come between me and someone else. And then you mentioned about people claiming a deer when they get a picture or something as their own. I don't understand that at all. To be honest, most of the time when I get a picture of a buck and he becomes a target animal, I'm going into the season and going to target that particular buck that year. Most of the time I'm preparing myself for someone else to shoot that deer. I'm just bracing myself for that to happen so that when it does, I'm not flying off the handle. I'm not acting stupid, not saying things I'm going to regret. that I can actually shake the person's hand, congratulate them, and mean it, be sincere about it. You know, a deer is a deer. You know, relationships with people are way more important than deer, no matter how big the deer is. And that may sound crazy coming from a guy who's, you know, devoted his whole life to chasing big deer. But if you'd have talked to me 20 years ago, I'd have probably had a different answer when I was 40. But now at 60, you know, I don't need another deer on my wall. If I never shoot another deer, God's blessed me with plenty of them. I've got more than I deserve on my wall today. So it's not that big a deal. But boy, the chase is what it's all about for me. Just trying to outwit that deer, getting his trail camera picture, actually laying eyes on him, seeing him come out with a bachelor group on a summer evening into a soybean field. Whether I ever put an arrow through him or not doesn't matter. It's those other things that leading up to putting an arrow through him that, you know, are a huge, huge part of the whole experience.
There's nothing, again, it comes with maturity. There's nothing in life that's worth, when it comes to whitetail, losing a friend over. And unfortunately, this deer season probably costs a lot of friendships every year. I just refuse. I've said it before. We've talked about it. I refuse to let something as silly as that come between doing the right thing as a Christian man. And it's just as simple as that. It's you got your priorities in the wrong order. If you're letting that happen, you got your priorities in the wrong order.
Well, I have seen friends of mine, I'm not even going to mention names because they'll know who I'm talking about, but I've seen friends of mine tolerate things from other friends of theirs that would have just set me off. They actually did my friends actually did the right thing when other friends of theirs did not do them right in the deer woods, you know, and I'll just leave it at that. I respect somebody that does not let a deer come between a friendship.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, here's the last one of the night. We're going to spend a little bit more time on Easter, not listening to a podcast. We're running a little bit ahead, but you might have a few things to say about this one.
Well, this is one right here that I had something happen today that after this question come in, after I'd done the outline for this podcast and sent it to Terry, I had something happen today that's going to get me a little bit fired up. So this question comes from Cody Malone from Wilmington, North Carolina. He says, I appreciate you guys and the way you use your platform to help others. My question is for Don and is in regard to the big bucks many of the bigger names in the hunting industry seem to kill every season. I hear guys say that if they had access to the same properties as these big name hunters, they would also be killing these big bucks. I am not sure that I agree with that. Do you think that if the average deer hunter had access to the same properties as Lee Lakosky, Mark Drury, and Don Higgins, that they would be shooting the same bucks that you guys do? I want to pick my words real careful here, to be respectful of the guys that were mentioned in this submission. So here's what I believe. This person brings up the names Lee Lakosky and Mark Drury. I believe if Mark Drury and Lee Lakosky had access to my farm for a season, they would kill any buck on this farm they wanted to. I also believe that if I had access to their farms for a season, I could kill any buck on their farms. I think, and there's a whole lot of other hunters that are in that same category. Once you reach a certain level, your success is not dictated by your hunting skills or your knowledge. After a certain point, your hunting success is dictated by the properties you have access to. And I've said it many times, I am blessed to have one of the best whitetail properties I've ever been on, acre for acre. Now, I'm not saying that my farm is as good as a 1,000-acre farm in southern Iowa, but acre for acre, I think my farm stacks up pretty darn good with any farm in North America. But that's not to say that I am a great deer hunter because I kill giant bucks here. There's a list of other hunters that could come to my farm and kill the biggest buck here year after year after year. But do I think the average hunter could go to Lee Lakowski's farm or Mark Drury's farm and kill the same bucks that those guys are? I don't. I don't think the average deer hunter could do that. I don't think the average deer hunter appreciates or recognizes or has any idea the work that goes into these properties by these guys outside of hunting season to set up for their success. The success didn't fall in any of their laps. It didn't. These guys work hard for it. Every mature buck that you see these guys killing on TV, you don't see a fraction of the work that went into it. You may see a 30-minute TV show that really only has about 20 minutes of actual video, and only about 5 to 10 minutes of that is the hunt for that one buck. That doesn't even come close to showing the amount of work that goes in. I don't think the average deer hunter has a clue the effort that goes in. And even on my own accord, I'm not even going to compare myself to those two guys because they own more property and bigger properties than I do. But I know the effort that I put in on my 160 acres here. And that's year round, every month of the year. I don't think the average deer hunter can even come close to comprehending that. So these guys that say, if I had access to his farm or their farm, I'd be shooting the same deer. In all reality, what I think would happen is if the average deer hunter, let's just say he had access to Lee Lakowski's best farm for a period of time, I think the average deer hunter would ruin that farm in 2 seasons or less. I think they would totally ruin it. They would go in there thinking they know what to do, and at first they would see deer galore. They'd probably even shoot some nice bucks. But within about 2 seasons, I think the average deer hunter would ruin the farm. And I don't say that in a demeaning way. It's just that I don't think the average deer hunter has an inkling of the effort that these guys put into it. So, no, I don't. To answer the question, no, I don't think so. So I want to get on another little tangent here. Do you want to add to that before I get on my little tangent, Terry?
I think you're spot on because it's not what they have, it's how they build it.
Right.
The average deer hunter, it's this entitlement that, oh, well, if I had this, I would be better, or if I had this, it's this jealousy thing. And quite honestly, it's not about what they did, it's about, or what they have, it's about how they got it and how they manipulated it. Your farm's a perfect example. 30 years ago, everyone would have drove by it with no inkling that it was ever going to have a whitetail on it, and you've built that. So to say if I did that, I would have that result? No, anyone that says that would not be willing to put 30 years of work into it, period. So it's not what it is today. It's how you got it there. That's where the average guy just doesn't want to put in and understand the work and effort and sweat and tears and good grief, the financial sacrifice associated with it. I've heard Lee and Tiffany talk the same way you have about your lights being turned off and the sacrifice they got to what they have today. And then these jealous people just say, oh, if I had that, I'd be able to do it too.
And I should probably throw out there, since those names were brought up in this submission, I have never spoke to Mark Drury whatsoever. I've seen him at shows, but we've never had a conversation. But I can tell by the podcast that he's been on and material he puts out, I have no doubt he's the real deal. He is absolutely the real deal. He knows what he's doing. When he talks, I listen because he's one of those upper echelon deer hunters that can throw out just a little tidbit of advice that'll help me take things to the next level. Now, Lee, I have been to Lee's place. I've talked to him on the phone. We've shared texts and things, so I do know Lee. But I find it kind of amazing that I was thrown in the same conversation with, or even using the same sentence with those two guys. But something happened today that really got me fired up. and probably a good thing we're recording this late instead of right after I got this, but someone sent me a TikTok link today. And this TikTok link was this clown basically saying that Lee Lakosky has a 3,000 acre farm in Illinois, and that he's been turning loose captive deer on this farm. And that this guy doesn't blame him for doing that because Lee is under pressure in the hunting industry to shoot big deer and blah, blah, blah. And this idiot even went on to just say that he's drove by this supposed farm and he's seen deer with antlers like caribou, quote, like caribou on this farm, that other deer on the farm were scared of him. He watched the other bucks being scared of these deer. And
from the road, he saw all
yeah,
this.
he saw it from the road. It's just one of the most asinine things I've ever seen anyone put out there. And folks, I'm here to tell you, I don't believe for a second that Lee Lakosky ever turned loose a pinned deer. And you know what really just fries my butt, Terry, is that there are people in this hunting industry that I know for absolute certain not only turn loose pinned deer, but they actually shoot deer in the pen and pass them off as wild deer. Multiple people with big names, bigger than my name in the hunting industry, are shooting pinned deer, and nobody is saying squat about it. And yet some idiot clown like this dude, he gets out there and he makes a TikTok video accusing Lee of turning loose captive deer. And I guess the reason it just frosts my butt so bad is because I've had the same thing said about me. And yet the guys that are really shooting pinned deer in the pen, nobody's saying anything. Nobody's bringing their names up. There's one guy that does get accused of it a little bit, but he's still got, he makes a post on social media of some giant buck, and there'll be, 10 million people like his post and comment and say, way to go. I won't mention his name. And yet there is no doubt the guy kills pinned deer. I have firsthand knowledge of the guy shooting pinned deer. And there's another guy that is big in the hunting industry that I seen a video where the guys from Exodus went to this guy's place at one time and did how they do the whitetail cribs. They went and did a whitetail cribs at this guy's place, and there's 10,000 comments under it, and there's not one comment accusing that guy of shooting pinned deer. And I absolutely know for 100% certain he does. I even know one of the pens he's done it in Ohio. First-hand knowledge. This ain't coming, pushed down the line, a rumor that spread and grew every time it was retold. This is first-hand knowledge. And this guy does not have anyone saying anything negative about him. And yet he's shooting pinned deer.
But yet a guy drove by a property, saw a caribou, and the other deer were intimidated by the caribou deer. So I'll give Lee is, I wouldn't call him a friend, but it's kind of an industry acquaintance, and I'll give him credit where credit is due. When it comes to science, and I mean, he dives into the weeds extremely hard. Both Lee and Mark are managing thousands and thousands of acres, and they're just they're going after a very select sample size across a lot of different ranges of whitetail. But I want to tell you something. I'm not gonna discredit him. He is not a guy that is going to go sit in an outfitter's tree stand that pre-scouted a deer. And I mean, he manages a lot of ground and gets into the weeds with the science stuff. I remember when we were first talking about EHD technology, and he was running real world feed in that feeder. Several meetings were about that. So to say that, I think it goes back to that jealousy and entitlement stuff. That's all it is.
Well, I'm 60 years old today. I've been around deer hunting since, I was in my early
Today
teens.
Your birthday?
No, I'm 60 years old. So
Okay. I was going to say, today's
So,
not your birthday,
no,
is it?
no, my birthday's in August, but so I've been around deer hunters and, trying to get my foot in the door since I was in my teens, really, back in the early 1980s. And I think I've got to the point where I can sniff out the real deal. When I'm talking about deer hunters, the real deal. I can sniff out the jealous haters. I can sniff out the people who think they know a whole lot more than they really do. I can sniff out the ignorant people. And when I say ignorant, I mean they just don't know what they're talking about. They don't have the knowledge of the subject. And I'm here to tell you, Lee Lakosky and Mark Drury are the real deal. There's no doubt about it. There's nothing phony about them. They know what it takes to kill big deer, and they get it done, and they're not turning loose pin deer or anything like that. I forgot now what the whole original question was. I got so fired up about the video the guy sent me today.
It's about the average hunter being able to kill deer on there.
Well,
the average hunter doesn't realize how much different a mature buck is. A 5-year-old buck. Even the Winsel brothers brought that up in the Legends Roundtable. The average hunter does not see the difference between a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. They just don't.
That's huge. I talk about that with my clients all the time. Most deer hunters do things to kill deer, but a lot of things they do to kill deer are counterproductive to killing mature bucks. And sometimes I think the hardest, when I go to a client, I love a client that just admits right out of the gate, hey, I'm new to this. I don't know much. I spent my life, as a professional athlete, building a business or chasing my career, whatever. Now I'm older. I've got money. I've got this hunting farm. I want to slow down. I want to enjoy this property. I want you to shave some years off the learning curve. That's the client that I can really help the most because he doesn't have a bunch of preconceived ideas. I think the most difficult guy for me to help is a guy that's killed a bunch of bucks. And I'm talking 2, 3, and occasionally maybe a 4-year-old buck. Because the thing about that guy is it's so hard to get him to break old habits. You can't get him to stop doing so. You can't get him to set a part of his property apart as a sanctuary, because somewhere in that sanctuary is a tree where
a sentimental
15 years
stand.
ago, 15 years ago,
stand.
He killed one good buck out of that tree, and he's never going to give that tree up again. And once a guy has killed several bucks, it just becomes harder and harder to get that guy to break old habits and look at things from a new perspective. And that's what it takes to kill big deer, mature deer. You can't just hunt them like a 3-year-old. I mean, if you do, you might occasionally luck into one, but it's not going to be very often.
Yep. Yeah, it's just they're a different critter altogether. So, oh well.
And just for the record, I don't want anybody calling or texting me asking me to share that video on TikTok. That video is garbage. It does not need to be shared. I'm about tempted to text the thing to Lee and tell Lee this guy needs sued. If somebody would post a video about me like that, I think I would sue him. But I'm not about to share it.
No, because that just gives more views to it.
Right.
So, well,
Total
what do you
garbage.
got planned for this week? You're going to have the boys 2 more days. What else you got planned?
Yeah, I got 3 or 4 consulting jobs left that I'm going to try to get wrapped up this week, because I'm hoping the week after I got Austin Razor going to come and help me for at least 2 days. And the more I think about things, I think I could probably keep him busy for 3 days. So I'm hoping the following week that he can show up and help me, and I want my consulting work all out of the way whenever he shows up. So that's kind of my plan for this week.
When we say we could keep him busy for 3 days, it ends up being a day and a half. What did he tell me? He did 3 4.6 acres of almost clear-cut TSI in 8 hours and 40 minutes and walked 8.14 miles and cut.
Well,
I mean, the guy's a machine.
yeah, that's good because I've got about 5 acres that I need for him to almost clear cut. So that's one day. And while we're there, there's a couple other projects that we're going to be doing there as well. But actually, there's no way he's going to get done on that property in one day.
No.
So,
well, I'm officially done. I had another call in, wanting me to do one, but I don't think it's going to be time for it. We'll see. And then in just 2 weeks, Joe Johnson and Al Foster are going to be turkey hunting on my place. So I don't want to miss that. We got, if you guys have been following me on social media, the new Frankfort, Kentucky store Cornerstone's opening this week. And I'm telling you, I'm exhausted. Consulting season is over and I got a store ready to open. So I'm ready to have a few just spare weekends that I'm not running crazy. I'm looking forward to that.
I'm ready for it too, but it's probably not going to happen until about the 1st of June because once I get done with the consulting and Austin and I get those projects done, it'll be time to start planting food plots. And probably by the end of May, I can take it easy a little bit.
That's fun work, though. That's just tractor therapy. That's not running all over the country and burning the interstates up, doing consulting visits. That's what I like doing. That's what I want to free up time to spend more time in the tractor and, work on my own stuff a little bit. I did deviate from something that you would never do this past week.
Oh,
I spent a bunch of money and went and bought a 65 Mustang Fastback for just a toy. You will never. That's not your thing. You don't have any other side hobbies beside hunting, do you?
I don't. I've talked about buying a Jeep to drive in the summer and go for evening rides, country rides in a Jeep, and go to get ice cream at some local ice cream shop and take back roads, look for deer and things like that. But I haven't bought one, so all we've done so far is talk about it for the last 10, 15 years.
That's the only reason we did it is my wife and I don't have a whole lot of common hobbies, so we thought that we'd get something that we could get in the car after church on Sunday and drive to lunch or go do something. So
there you go.
It's a family car that was their dad's that we're going to keep in the family that he wanted to sell. So
awesome.
So maybe that's what I'll be doing the next couple weekends. I don't know.
Yeah. We'll see. Hey, speaking of turkeys, my turkeys are back. Remember I had turkeys here last spring for the first time when they left? Well, they've come back, and I've seen one hen and one young Jake so far, but I've started getting them on my trail cameras as well.
The spawn of Satan.
Well, I may be down there with Joe and Al to help you take care of them, but I'll tell you what. Are
you going to try to come or not?
I am going to try to come, but I don't have any turkey hunting gear. I mean, I don't even know what I got a shotgun, but
I'll take care of you. You wear your Osseo gear. We'll take care of the rest.
Am I supposed to have decoys or a face net or a face mask or any of that stuff?
Your Osseo hoodie already has an integrated face mask in it. Just bring your Osseo and we'll take care of the rest of it. You don't have to worry.
Well, do I need a special shotgun? Because I've got a Remington 1100 with a 30-inch full choke barrel. Will that work?
Yeah, but you can just use our stuff. It's already dialed in.
Probably better that way anyway, but I was on a consulting visit today, and the guy that I was met with, he had taken today was youth season in Illinois, opened, and he took his daughter turkey hunting this morning before I got there, so I didn't show up to about 9:30 to allow him and her to hunt. But anyway, he comes in from the hunt, we get in his side by side, and we go tour this property. And he had two properties really that were just about a quarter mile apart. There was like one property between the two, and they had been hunting on the far property, not with the one we met on. So we jump on the side by side, and I'm telling you, we hadn't been on that side by side 10 minutes driving these trails around the farm. We come around the corner, and there's a gobbler in full strut, not 30 yards probably from the side by side. He didn't even care that we was there. He's just strutting around and cutting circles and stuff and acting stupid. there's no way a whitetail buck would do that. I mean, I don't understand what the big deal is with these birds, because that was the stupidest thing I seen.
I think people love their turkey hunting. People love their pheasant hunting. It's just what they like doing. And turkey hunting's a different style. It's a lot of running, gunning, and I don't know. I just I got my thing. People can have theirs. That's all there is to it, right?
Well, I think it'd be a great thing if more deer hunters would just quit deer hunting and start turkey hunting.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk
leasing
bad
all
about
those
them.
properties.
Yeah.
Make land prices go down a little bit.
I think turkey hunting, let's make turkey hunting great again.
We might have to make that the meme for the thumbnail for the podcast tonight. So
Yep.
well, that's all I got. Happy Easter, everyone. We really appreciate the support. Continue to pray for Andrea. And again, couldn't do this without all of you all listening. Make sure, do you want to give that number to everybody for the Amish listeners? Do you have that handy or not?
I think so. Hold on just a second. And you people need to spread this around too. If you got Amish friends, I continue to get calls and text about this. People wanting to know the number. So the number to call in for the podcast is 814-322-9352, extension 20. That's 814-322-9352, extension 20.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate it.
God bless everyone. See you next week.